Good morning, church. How we feeling this morning? Come on, man. I am so excited to be here, excited to be hanging out. And we're about to get really serious. Obviously, we got an amazing series. And today, I love Pastor Dan so much. He said, hey, do you want to come preach on the topic of depression? And so, man, just super excited to preach on that. And but before we get there, we'll get there in just a moment. I just want to say, if we haven't had the chance to meet, my name is Ryan. I'm the lead pastor of a church plant that you guys are sending out called Cahaba City Church. And man, it has just been such an incredible season for us. You know, last time I was here, I told you guys we were about to start having once a month services, and we have started having once a month church services. And it really, honestly, if you've never been a part of a church plant, I know some of you guys have been a part of Cornerstone since day one and all that. Man, it's just really cool when you get to see God putting pieces together, amen? And I don't have a lot of time to preach, so I'm going to tell you just a quick story. But we actually, right now, we have church in a bar. And I know that that's not crazy to a lot of people at Cornerstone. You're like, that's awesome, right? But it comes with a lot of challenges, comes with a lot of different things. But we have church in a bar right in the middle of our city. And, man, our mission really is just to reach the 3 out of 5 people that don't go to church anywhere in the Trussville area. And so, man, when we decided to meet at this bar, I knew that because we're doing Sunday nights right now, I knew that we might get some random people, right, just randomly stumble in. And so our first worship night we ever had as a church, our first Sunday service, whatever you want to call it, we had almost 100 people show up. I mean, it was incredible, right? Like, it was amazing. Some of the Cornerstone family came to hang out, and, man, it was just so much fun. But I have to tell you this one story because I think it's really cool, is that night, there was about 25 or 30 people that were just new. I didn't know them. They were just new guests. The rest of that was, you know, Cornerstone family or our launch team and all those things. But we had about 7 or 8 people, literally, that heard the music playing in the entertainment district and just walked in thinking it was like a live show, right? And ended up staying the entire night, right? And so it was so much fun. But we had this one guy, this 21-year-old guy named Chris. And I love telling this story because I just think it kind of it lays out everything that we're trying to do. Chris walked in, just heard the music. He was hanging out with his friends. He said, I want to go check this thing out. Walked in, 21-year-old guy. And he ended up staying the whole night, not plugged into the church, didn't grow up a Christian, none of those things, right? The exact kind of person that I want to be able to reach with our church. And I meet Chris, I talk to him, all this fun stuff, and I say, hey, bro, let's go out and get lunch tomorrow. So we went and got lunch. And he said this phrase that I just want to leave you with, that I would pray that you would pray for Cornerstone and you would pray this for us as well. He said, I didn't really know what I was looking for until y'all came and found me. And for me, I heard that, and I was like, man, we're doing it, right? Like, we're accomplishing. And Chris still has not made a decision to follow Jesus, but how many of you will believe with me that that'll come soon, right? And, man, it's just the beginning stages for Chris to be able to encounter Jesus in a way, because we're meeting in a bar. We're doing it different. And so if you would just pray for Cahaba City, if you'd pray that we could get a building and stop meeting in a bar, that would be amazing. But, man, we're just super excited. So continue to pray for us, continue to lift us up. And I'll be back, as I always say, to give you some updates. And, man, I just want to say, give a shout out to Dan really quick. You know, I got to be in South Dakota, as he said, this past week, all week at a pastor's conference, make a lot of connections. Your pastor, one of my best friends, Dan, he flew up there literally for 24 hours just to present me and to connect me with pastors. Can you just give it up for Dan? Man, he, like that just doesn't happen, right? Like that, there's just not a lot of pastors that do that. And so, man, I just wanted to give him a shout out and say thank you so much for that. But today I'm excited to preach in this series, A Light in Dark Places. And I've got a lot to talk about in a little bit of time, but I want to talk about this topic that honestly we don't like talking about in church. And I would say pastors don't like talking about it because a lot of pastors are depressed and they don't know how to talk about it. But we got to talk about it. It's this topic called depression. It's this thing that a lot of the world is dealing with. It's a thing that really since 2020 has kind of ramped up in our culture because there is so many things in life that happen, right? There's so many things in life that are going on. Now, I don't know your story in the room today, but I know my own. And I know that for me, when I try to describe depression to somebody, this is the only way I know how to describe it. And you can say amen if you relate. This is how I would describe depression, is when I have faced depression in my life, it feels like the lights just go out. Anybody else? Right? So today I want to preach a message called When the Lights Go Out. Like, what do you do when the lights go out? What do you do when you're stuck in that dark place, when you're kind of caught and all the light is gone and you're trying to find a flicker of hope, you're trying to find a little flicker of light? What do you do when the lights go out? And this is what we're going to talk about today in this series. And I want to read, I know this is a little bit different than you're used to with me, but I actually want to read 24 verses of the exact same chapter of the Bible. And this is the only 24 verses we're going to preach on. Okay? I want to read this to you because Jeremiah, the writer of Lamentations 3, is actually laying out some things within Lamentations 3 that I think I couldn't say it better myself. When I feel like the lights go out, when I feel like things are getting cloudy, when I think that I'm stuck in the dark, when I feel like I'm kind of in this dark place and I'm looking for the light, this honestly describes a lot of how I feel. Verse 1 of Lamentations 3 says this. He says, I am the one who has seen the afflictions that come from the rod of the Lord's anger. That's heavy, right? I mean, that's a heavy start. Notice what he says. He says, he has led me into darkness, shutting out all the light. What Jeremiah is explaining here is, I feel like all the lights have gone out, right? I feel like I'm stuck. He has turned his hand against me again and again all day long. He has made my skin and flesh grow old. He has broken my bones. He has besieged and surrounded me with anguish and distress. He has buried me in a dark place like those long dead. He has walled me in, and I cannot escape. He has bound me in heavy chains, and though I cry and shout, he has shut out my prayers. He has blocked my way with a high stone wall. He has made my road crooked. He has hidden like a bear or a lion waiting to attack me. He has dragged me off the path and torn me in pieces, leaving me helpless and devastated. He has drawn his bow and made me the target for his arrows. He shot arrows deep into my heart. My own people laugh at me all day long. They sing their mocking songs. He has filled me with bitterness and given a bitter cup of sorrow to drink. He has made me chew on gravel. He has rolled me in the dust. Notice what he says here. Peace has been stripped away. Like, my peace is gone, and I have forgotten what prosperity is. I cry out, my splendor is gone. Everything I had hoped for from the Lord is lost. The thought of my suffering and homelessness is bitter beyond words. Notice what he says. I will never forget this awful time. I'll never forget it as I grieve over my loss. And notice the change that's going to happen in verse 21. He says, yet I still dare to hope. When I remember this, the faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. Great is his faithfulness. His mercies begin afresh each morning. I say to myself, the Lord is my inheritance, therefore I will hope in him. I feel like after reading this, we just kind of need to take a deep breath, right? Like, we just need to. But if I was to describe to you moments where I have felt depressed, or moments where I have felt anxious, or moments where I have felt like the lights went off, or moments where I have felt like everything was crumbling around me, I couldn't put it into words better than that. You see, Jeremiah is letting us know a couple things really fast, that when you're in a dark season, when you're in a depressed moment, when you feel like the lights have gone out, you don't know what truth is a lot of times, right? And so you start saying how you feel, even though you know deep down that it's a lie, you're still just saying the way that you feel on the inside. And Jeremiah makes it clear where he stands. He said, I feel lost and without hope. Have you ever felt that way? He said, man, I feel lost. He makes it clear, I can't find the light. Have you ever been there? Like, I'm searching for it. I want to find it. I want to know where the light is. I want to know where God is. I want to know that he still has plans for me, but I can't see it. He makes it clear, my peace is gone. Have you ever been there? Have you ever been in a place where your peace was stripped from you? Where just the ability to lay down at night and sleep was stripped away from you, right? I mean, that's your peace getting stripped away. Jeremiah makes it clear really fast. I'm sure you caught it. He thinks the Lord is mad at him because of what he's going through. Have you ever been there? Like, he is describing the way he's feeling as God is angry with me. God has forgotten about me. God has become an enemy to me. Like, I am God's enemy. And I think we do this a lot of times because sometimes when God's hand isn't blessing us, we think his heart has turned against us. And this is what Jeremiah is experiencing. He's like, man, I don't feel his blessing, so I guess his heart is now against me. And I have felt this way when I was in the middle of depression. I have felt this way. And this is where I want us to try to go today, is verse 21. He said, yet I still dare to hope. If I could do anything for you today in the 20 minutes that I have left, I would hope that I could just give you a little glimmer to try to dare to hope again. If you are in this room and you're facing depression, or you feel like you are stuck in the dark, or you feel like the lights have gone out and you can't see 5 feet in front of you, and you just think, man, this is the way it's always going to be, my hope would be that you wouldn't live in the first 20 verses, but that you would live in verse 21. Yet I still dare to hope again. This is the hope that I would have for you, is that you would leave here today maybe just with a glimmer, maybe just with an inch of, yet I dare to hope again. One of my least favorite questions in the world is, are you okay? Anybody else hate that question? You hate that? Man, I hate this question. Especially as a pastor. Like, Dan, you may relate to this. Like, I hate this question because I'll be honest. Like, if you ask a pastor that question, we want to be honest, but we almost feel like we can't. Because if we're honest, then you're going to be like, wait, you feel like that, right? Are you allowed to feel like that? I thought you were perfect, right? And for me, it's always been awkward. It's always been an awkward question. I hate it when somebody walks up to me and says, hey, bro, you all right? Because I feel like I've got to lie every single time. Anybody else? Like, you feel like you just got to give the holy answer. You got to give the biblical answer. Like, yeah, I'm doing good. Blessed and highly favored, everyone, right? Like, I'm feeling good, right? And it's even worse when, you're a Florida State fan and everybody's texting you and I'm like, yeah, I'm depressed, right? But for me, I hate this question. I mean, I've hated it my entire life. And if I could take you back to 2020, the world was just all over the place, right? The world was all over the place and was lost, and there was so many things going on. And I had the hardest season of my life up until that point in 2020, along with the rest of the world. And there was this one day in particular, I won't tell you the whole story, but one day in particular, I went to my pastor, my mentor's office, and I sat down, and we had a whole meeting about trying to figure this COVID thing out, which we were having meetings, and nobody knew what was happening or what was supposed to happen and all the things. And Luke, my pastor at the time, he said, hey, bro, I need you to stay after the meeting, which, in the principal's office, you're in trouble, right? And he said, hey, bro, I just wanted to check on you. And he said this question, are you okay? And I knew in my head immediately, I've got two kind of things I can do. I can give him the bullcrap answer, or I could be honest for the first time in my life. And I said something that I have never said before. I said, I don't know what to do with how I feel on the inside. Have you ever been there? Like, I don't know what to do with the way I feel in here. And he said something that I'm going to say to you that has changed my life. He said, I need you to feel all of it. I need you to feel every single bit of it. You see, up until this point in 2020, I thought that emotions were an enemy. I thought that emotions were something that I just kind of pressed down, and as a pastor, I couldn't really live in, right? Like, I had to just act like things were together, and I had to always be put together and make sure I was pretty and all the things and make sure I was presentable and all this stuff. And I lived the lie believing that emotions were an enemy that I couldn't really experience. And this is what I want to remind you of today, is that emotions are not an enemy. They're not an enemy. God actually created your emotions, and it took me too long to realize this. God created our emotions, and at times they can feel like they are the enemy, right? Have you ever been there? Like, you ever felt like, man, if I could just stop feeling this way, everything in my life would be better. But I like to say it this way. Emotions are how we feel, but they don't have to change who we are. You see, for me, in this moment in 2020, emotions were changing who I was because I was letting them do something in my life that they weren't supposed to do. But we have to learn how to deal with them. We have to learn how to deal with these moments. For some of us, I, being one of those people, would just let the lights go out, and I would just say, I guess this is the way it's always going to be. I would let the lights go out, and I would just say, I guess this is God's plan for my life. And can I just tell you, that is not God's plan for your life. It's the enemy's plan for your life. The enemy wants you stuck in a dark place. The enemy wants you bound by chains of depression. The enemy wants you lost and alone, wandering in the darkness. The enemy wants you breathing but not really living. Did you hear me? Like, the enemy just wants you existing, but he doesn't want you living in freedom from depression. He doesn't want you living in freedom from anxiety. He doesn't want you living in freedom from worry. Why? Because then you'll actually accomplish the things that God has called you to accomplish, which he doesn't want to happen. And so the enemy is going to fight you time and time again to keep you stuck in that dark place, believing the lie that you are the only one, that you're the only one facing this, that you're stuck in your depression, that you are stuck in the dark place, that you are bound by the chains, but God has a better plan for you. And I'm going to give you 4 things really fast. I'm going to rattle these off really quick. I'm going to give you some tips that I think have helped me as I have faced depression. Number 1, first thing you got to do is you got to say it, don't suppress it. You got to say it, don't suppress it. We see this in Lamentations chapter 3, verses 1 through 20. If Jeremiah does anything well, he says how he feels. He doesn't sugarcoat it. He doesn't make it pretty. He doesn't make it postable. And yet it ended up in the most important book ever created. He lays out how he feels. When's the last time you've done that? When's the last time you stopped trying to be presentable? When's the last time you stopped playing games with your words? When's the last time you tried to make it poetic and sound like everything wasn't as bad as it really is? When's the last time you said, God, where are you? When's the last time you said, I need some help? We see in verses 1 through 20, he does this. He's our example. I'm saying it, not suppressing it. One of the biggest reasons we stay in dark places is because we suppress the way we feel. Every single one of us in this room have suppressors. Every single one of us. Social media. When you want to ignore your problems, you just get on social media thinking that social media scroll and TikTok scroll and all these things are going to make you feel better. When I don't know about you, it just makes me feel 10 times worse. Anybody else? Like, you just get on there and you're just going through things. All the teenagers in here, man, playing those video games, and you're just ignoring the way you feel, and you're just online doing all this stuff, right? Amazon, anybody? Like, you just get on Amazon, you're like, I need this right now, right? Some of y'all need to get off of Temu, boo-boo, right? Like, some of y'all just on Temu, and y'all just like, man, I need this $1.12 item, right? Like, I need this thing. And we suppress all the time. I do the same thing, literally. You can ask my wife. If my wife was here today, you could ask her. When I feel sad, I go to Target. Literally, I go to Target. I walk into Target, and I'm like, you know what? I need this pillow, right? Like, that's just me. Like, I walk into Target, and I'm like, yo, this is home. Like, I go to Starbucks. I get myself a drink. Like, we all have suppressors. But what so many of us do is we use our suppressors to ignore the way we feel. But here's the truth, is what doesn't get dealt with is eventually going to destroy something. What doesn't get dealt with is eventually going to destroy something. If you don't let it out, it's eventually going to blow up in your face. Anybody have that experience? Like if you don't actually deal with the way you feel, if you don't say it and you just suppress it, eventually it's going to explode. You've got to say it and say the way you feel. And here's the truth that I don't know if anybody's told you that I'm going to try to set you free with today, is who cares what anybody thinks about how you feel? Man, for so long, I lived this lie believing that I couldn't tell anybody because they were going to judge me or because they were going to say things about me. At the end of the day, I have just realized, who cares? I need healing. Like, I need hope. I need somebody to help me. You got to stop worrying so much about suppressing your emotions because you're worried about what that person or that situation or this thing is going to think. Maybe for the first time today in your entire life, you need to just say the way you actually feel. And guess what? We say it in our house this way: show me you're ugly. Like me and my wife, we say this all the time to each other. Like, quit with all that. Like, show me you're ugly, right? Like, show me how you actually feel. Show me what you're actually trying to say. Say it, don't suppress it, because what doesn't get dealt with is eventually going to destroy something. Number 2, really fast, is you've got to learn to steer your emotions. I want you to do this. I want you to imagine a car. You see, emotions are meant to be a passenger in the car that you are driving. But for a lot of us, what happens is we either let our emotions drive the car, or we do like what I do, is we try to lock emotions completely out of the car. Anybody else? So what happens is we take something that was meant to be a passenger in the car, something that we're supposed to experience, we're supposed to be around, and we either let it drive, which is complete chaos, which we'll talk about in a second, or we completely try to lock them out of the car and ignore that emotions are even there. You see, when we let them drive the car, what happens is we feel drug in 1,000 directions, up and down all the time, not really sure who we are, where we are. We're just all over the place. Anybody else ever been there? Like, man, I'm just all over the place. I don't know who I am. And when we try to lock them out of the car, we ignore them like we just talked about, and we just hope that they go away on their own. How many of you know depression doesn't work that way? You can't just ignore your way out of depression. You can't just ignore your way out of anxiety. You've got to face it. And for me, I've had moments where I've let them drive the car. I've had moments where I have let emotions just drive the car, and man, my life has been all over the place. But it's like, I like to say it this way: don't let something lead that isn't qualified to be in charge. It would be like me going, my son Aiden just got this little powered, battery car that he can drive through the yard and all this stuff. And we got it off Facebook, and man, he loves it. Like, it's super fast and all this stuff. It would be like me going, you know what, bro? Like, man, you're really crushing it with that little battery car. Here's the keys to the minivan. Can you drive me to the store? Obviously, my 3-year-old is not capable of driving our minivan or qualified to drive our minivan. But this is yet what we do with our emotions, is we go, you know what? You seem qualified to drive the ship, right? Like, you seem qualified to lead my life. And we let our emotions do this, and this is where you see people that are just like this all the time. Y'all know that person. If you don't know that person, you are that person, right? Like, you just see people that are, man, they're just up and down, and you never know if you're going to get that Becky or that Becky, right? Like, you never know if you're going to get him or you're going to get him, right? And you're just constantly like this over and over and over again, and possibly it's because you're not driving. You're letting your emotions drive. Did you know that you can steer your emotions? You can. I have faced depression. I have faced anxiety. I have faced suicidal thoughts. I have faced all these things. It is possible for you to steer them where they need to go. Now, we'll get to how to do that in just a moment. But you've got to take over the wheel. And in the same way, you've got to stop locking them out of the car. Locking your emotions out is just keeping yourself locked up. Locking your emotions out or just keeping yourself locked up, you're just keeping yourself bound. You're not accomplishing anything. You're not doing anything. You are just letting emotions run. You've got to steer your emotions where they need to go. Don't act like they aren't present. That's just going to cause a bigger issue in the future. Number 3, is you got to seek what you need. I don't know who needs to hear this morning, but did you know it's okay for you to need? It's okay for you to need. It is okay to need help. It is okay to feel down. It is okay to need medicine. It is okay to need therapy. It is okay to need counseling. It is okay to find what you need. For the longest time, I didn't believe this. I didn't believe that I could go and it would be okay for me to find what I need. I've got to make this point broad because I don't know your story, but I know that if you are dealing with depression, you have a need. And whatever your need is, you have the ability through the freedom that God gives you to seek out that need, to seek and find help for that need. But I need you to hear me. This is so important. If you don't make time for your wellness, you'll be forced to make time for your illness. If you don't make time for your wellness, you're going to be forced to make time for your illness. Man, you've got to say it, don't suppress it. You got to learn to steer your emotions, but then after you're steering those emotions, you've got to actually seek what you need. Maybe you need to go to Pastor Dan or Pastor Zach or Pastor Colin or somebody on the team, and you need to say, hey, can you help me with how I feel on the inside? Maybe you need to seek a doctor and you need to say, hey, I feel like things are not right on the inside. I feel like I need some help. Maybe you need to seek some help outside of that. Maybe you need some therapy or some counseling. You need to make time for your wellness so that you're not forced to make time for your illness. Like, you've got to seek what you need. And because of time, I've got to say this last thing, and this is the fourth thing, is you've got to start to hope again. You've got to start to hope again. I know that this is easier said than done. Trust me. I am the poster child of trying not to make things sound like they are just as simple as snapping your fingers. Because I don't know about you, my life has not been that way. Anybody else? My life has not been like, I just snap my fingers and all my problems are gone. It takes work to deal with something like depression. It takes effort to actually face the anxiety that I have faced in my life. It takes time and effort. But I just need you to know, when I tell you to start to hope again, this is coming from someone that has faced some of the darkest moments of depression. This is coming from someone who knows what it feels like when the lights go out. This is not a pastor standing on a stage telling you all these things that I have never done myself. This is somebody that's currently standing in front of you, knowing that I have faced every single moment I'm about to tell you, wondering if hope was possible, and it was the only thing that got me through. I've had moments, and this is just for anybody, I think there's somebody in here that might need this. I've had moments where I found myself in an emergency room at 2 a.m., feeling like I was gonna die, feeling like I couldn't breathe, on the floor of an emergency room in another state, because I couldn't sleep, and I had to wake my wife up, and I had to say, babe, I literally can't breathe. Only to find out that I was having a panic attack from everything in my life that was going on. You want to talk about low? You want to talk about feeling like the lights have gone out? Like, I have been there. 2020, man, I found myself in that emergency room wondering if I was going to live another day because I couldn't breathe. Maybe you're there today. I've had moments when I was in middle school and high school where I wondered, as I sat in my room at night, and I had all the friends in the world and all the influence and all the things that I wanted, but I still had these moments where I was in middle school and high school where I sat in my room alone and I wondered if anyone would notice if I was no longer here. Like, I've had those moments. Maybe you're a teenager in this room and, man, you're having those moments right now. Like, I wonder if anybody cares. I wonder if anybody knows and notices me. I've had moments where I fell to my knees in a hospital room bathroom after losing a baby, and I began to believe the same things that Lamentations 3 says in verses 1 through 20, like, God, what the heck are you doing? Where are you? Why am I stuck and bound? Why can I not get out? And I tell you all these things to tell you this, is I've got medicine, I've gotten therapy, I've gotten counseling, I have dealt with all of these things, but at the end of the day, if I could give you one thing that has helped me the most, it's this. It's hope. Hope is the ultimate antidepressant. It's the thing that when I felt like I couldn't take another step forward, it like gave me the power. It gave me the strength to like take that, maybe just little step, but it gave me the ability to just take that step again. So if I could ask you this question as I close, I'm over on time. Do you feel like you can hope again? Maybe this morning I just need to ask you this question. Are you okay? Like, don't give me the spiritual answer. Don't give me the blessed and highly favored. Like, this morning, right here, right now, in front of God, private in your seat, are you okay? Because if you're not, I need to give you this, and then I'll close. It says, the faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. Great is his faithfulness. His mercies begin afresh each morning. I say to myself, the Lord is my inheritance. Therefore, I will hope in him. There is hope this morning for whatever you are facing in the name, in the person of Jesus. And if you have never experienced him, I pray that today would be the day that you say, I'm done playing games. I'm done having all the right answers. I'm giving my life. I'm giving my hope. I'm putting all my trust in him.